Hi, Joel.
Hi, Bob.
How you doing?
Never better.
That's saying something because you're a happy camper.
Oh, yeah.
Let
Up
me
here.
let me
Flourishing.
what?
I'm flourishing.
You are you are ever flourishing. Let me introduce this. You are Joel Achenbach, famous reporter for the Washington Post. So esteemed, I gather, is that an actual physical office of your own there? Is that your office? And not a mere cubicle? That's an office?
Are you suggesting that a man of my stature would have a mere cubicle? Is that what you're
These
saying?
days in journalism, a man of virtually every stature has a cubicle.
Okay, let me just say this. I do, in fact, work out of a cubicle. This is not my office. But, I mean, I think that, it puts me in touch with the common person, to be in a cubicle.
Right, you're choosing to be in a cubicle.
Exactly. If you demanded
a 7-room office suite,
well,
Jeff Bezos would be on a jet to Washington to make sure that they did a darn good job of setting it up.
I don't need a couch in my office, but I do want the corner office, because I like to be able to look, directions.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
we are moving from this building, the Washington Post, to a new office.
Because
Jeff, you have to tell me which office is going to be mine.
Because Jeff Bezos is such a skinflint, no doubt. This is gonna like save you guys money. Go ahead, vent. Would you vent a little about the paper's owner?
I might not. I think I might eschew that possibility.
Okay. Well, listen. Let me having introduced you as the famous reporter and sometimes comic writer, you might say. Not that you write comics for the Washington Post, but you write in an amusing fashion often.
Somewhat amusing, somewhat comic.
Well, arguably amusing.
The phrase I would use is almost funny.
That's the phrase I would use.
Yeah, that's actually, and it's bad because, if you're going to try to be funny, it's really important not to be almost funny. That's
considered failure in the funny business.
That is considered a disaster. That is considered painful for everyone involved.
It hurts. Sometimes I read your stuff, and frankly, it's like having an abscessed tooth.
It is, yeah.
But I digress because I haven't introduced the other party of this conversation. That would be me. I'm Robert Wright of Blogging Heads TV and of Meaning of Life TV, the sister channel of Blogging Heads TV that is making its debut roughly as we post this very dialogue. And we're going to do some talking about the meaning of life. And later in the conversation, I'm going to answer some questions people may have about the Meaning of Life TV and its relationship to Blogging Heads TV. But you're holding up your hand as if you want to say something, so go ahead.
Is it real? What is it about, Meaning of Life TV?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Joel, because that's one thing we're going to discuss. We're going to flesh that question out in the course of this conversation. And you know why you're the perfect person for that?
But how's my hair?
You're exactly, because you're always asking deep questions. You're always asking deep questions. Never superficial cosmetic questions.
We're not taping this, are we?
Of course not.
Okay, good. Whew.
That was close.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
So, because the thing about you is, beneath your comic facade, there is a person on a spiritual quest. It's evident in your writing. Don't think you're fooling us. We see the existential angst. We see the search for meaning. It virtually pervades everything you do, even if it is as subtext.
But below that
is something even shallower.
Yeah, is just like a badass, like a
guy
who don't care, who just don't care.
There was the Harley Davidson phase of your life.
Yeah. So there's multiple layers, and one layer, there's one stratum, if that's a word. I think about the meaning of life.
You want me to give you an example?
Mm-hmm.
You recently wrote. It was really a good piece. And I got to say, you're actually a good writer. This sometimes occurs to me when I read your stuff, but I digress. You were reading this piece about mortality. You wrote this piece about mortality on Achenblog, your famous first ever at the Washington Post, a blog, which dates back before the Common Era. And this was about I think the title was, "This Could Be the Last Time I," and then in brackets, fill in the blank. And it was about your coming to terms with the fact that, frankly, you're getting to be a pretty old critter. And here's one thing you wrote. You wrote, for example, the other day I was in my hometown with my 3 kids, and I thought this might be the last time we go to my hometown and the last time we stop at Steak and Shake for a shake. Does that not summon a tear to your eye? Now that's classic Joel Achenbach. You're there on the brink of an actual serious exploration of the meaning of life, and then you try to cover it up all of a sudden with this facade of lightheartedness and humor and even sarcasm.
Well, the nature of humor is overlapping, but incompatible frames of reference. So you have the one frame of like the heavy-duty thought, what's life all about, and the other of the milkshake, or the fries, okay, which is, and frankly, I'm probably, this is going to shock you, I'm probably a little young to do the whole, this might be the last time I do this thing.
Frankly, Joel, this is going to shock you, you're wrong. You're wrong about that.
I'm not as old as you, and
You're not quite as old as I am, but here's the one.
I'm not nearly as old as you.
Look, I don't use hair dye, Joel. I don't use hair dye. You want to talk about contrast between us? I don't dye my hair. There is some gray peeking through for that very reason.
I only dye my back hair.
Okay, so listen, but seriously.
I don't even know if that's funny. I think, yeah.
It's not. It's not. That was nervous laughter on my part.
It's almost funny.
So
okay, I laughed.
That's the main thing. That's the main thing. Your writing is for your own amusement, after all.
One person thought that was funny.
But this is a serious thing. This is a good example of a serious issue that is confronted by people, mortality and you find yourself thinking more about what makes your life meaningful as you get older, right? And why is it? This is a serious question. And one thing I'm going to do here is try to get Joel Achenbach to speak seriously about the meaning of life and confront the abyss. And here's the question. Why is it important, and it clearly is important, for your kids for you to share something about your own roots with your children? Why is that an important and meaningful thing?
Well, we've only been to my hometown once before, and they thought it had too many bugs. And then my eldest daughter wrote an essay for school saying, my dad grew up in a place where nothing ever happened. It was really boring, and that made me feel bad. And so I wanted to bring him back, and we made the rounds, and there's a lot going on, and the bugs didn't bother them as much because they're now actual adults. And I want to, at some point, feel like I can kind of move on and just become an old person and do my gardening. And, the younger generation, they come along and they reinvent the world. And I actually have a deep thought on all this, if I may.
Good. That would be nice.
Well, I think there's a lot of discussion these days about whether or not humans should do genetic engineering or bioengineering or,
the whole transhumanism.
Transhumanism. I'm sure you've talked about transhumanism.
Right.
Is that ethical? Is it right? Or is getting old and, dare I say, dying part of the meaning of life? In other words, I think that's a big question for you to gnaw on, because I kind of think it is. I sort of feel like part of the meaning of life is you do your thing, and then you get out of the way and let the new people come along and take over and reinvent the world. I kind of like that system. I think it's a good system. It's worked on Earth for roughly 3.5 billion years of evolution, right? I mean, because
it worked in the sense that I guess the show is still going on. Yeah.
I mean, do you want just to be prokaryotes? No, the eukaryotes got to come along, right?
As they did.
As they did. So I'm a little prokaryotic, and my kids.
You're actually technically you are pro-eukaryotic.
Something like that, yeah.
You're in favor of eukaryotic cells.
So if we could, in theory, become immortal or even live to be 170 years old, would that be right? I mean, I'd be interested to know if your viewers want to weigh in on that. I mean, it kind of creeps me out. I sort of feel like part of the meaning of life is getting in touch with the meaning of human life. Okay, and meaning of human life, it has its highs and lows. It has its soaring, elements, and then you have your contractionary phase, aging, and you get older and wiser, and all that seems to me to be a system we've had in place for a while, and I like it. Even though I don't personally want to be infirm or, broken down or, in pain or hobbling or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
I agree with you on this those last few
And I want to
years.
be. I'd like to be young forever, particularly given that being young was always my shtick. You know what I mean? I was sort of like,
You were a smart ass.
yeah, and immature,
Right.
immature,
And you remain so, frankly.
completely. No, I mean, yeah. So immature for me was a good system. It was a shtick, and it's getting harder to support that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
as long as you keep
everyone else here.
As long as you keep dyeing the hair, I don't think anybody will pick up on the contradiction.
Yeah. Well, this is not my hair. This is not. I mean,
Well, that's the beauty of buying.
Just take it off, and get the whole thing off.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
I feel like
okay,
I get a lot of traction, but I mean, what do you think, Bob? I mean, honestly, what do you? The whole like getting older thing. I mean, but. And by the way, haven't you been in like a cave for 2 weeks?
I just did do a 2-week, not 1 week, 2-week silent meditation retreat. You talk about your pondering of the meaning of life, Joel Achenbach.
Do you know that gay marriage is now legal across the United States?
Well, it's funny because on the final night of the retreat, in general, you're totally insulated from the world. No news from the world. I'd been there 2 weeks, and the meditation teacher says, well, some of you are going to leave tomorrow. You should gird your loins because lots of things have happened in the world, some good, some bad. And he actually mentioned the gay marriage ruling and said, but some bad things have happened too, meaning presumably the church shooting and some of the terrorist attacks abroad. And, like, it's okay that he said that to me because I was leaving the next morning, but some people there were staying for another month. And they were left to wonder what the hell he was talking, what catastrophe loomed.
So they're still in the hole for another month.
They're still there. We should go, like,
does your phone
crash that party.
Does your phone get good Wi-Fi?
I did not touch the cell phone. I put it in airplane mode and used it only as an alarm clock.
And where were you?
In central Massachusetts. Did about 5 hours a day of sitting meditation, a few hours a day of walking meditation, which is not just taking a walk, Joel Achenbach.
What do you do?
You do a lot of meditating and try to be mindful. You get into a totally different frame of mind. One interesting thing about it is you realize the degree of serenity that is possible, and the degree of like appreciation of beauty that is possible without drugs.
Can you take Advil?
You are allowed to take Advil if necessary, and I did have excruciating tooth pain for a while, but I digress.
Tooth pain?
Yeah.
From meditating?
No, it was just independent.
Were you biting something?
We shouldn't digress. Time is finite, Joel. We only have so long on this planet. Let's don't talk about my tooth pain, okay?
Yeah. So how did it change you? Like, tell me something.
Well, I should say first of all, I had already done like 5 one-week meditation retreats, and I should also say I've been writing a book on this. In fact, I sent the manuscript in to my editor several days before going on this. So this is part personal exploration, part research. Whenever I do this, in a way. But
so is meditating? Does it really count if you're also thinking about how you're meditating? So
there you are,
meditating.
Problem.
I'm being really mindful. I'm meditating.
That is the problem.
This is chapter 4 of my book.
Man, you've nailed it. One of these meditation teachers at the end of a retreat, I was telling her I was about my, thing and whatever, and she said, I think you may have to choose between writing this book and liberation. She did. I said...
Because what you were doing was meta-meditation.
Oh, we did a session of meta-meditation, but I got to admit, I am not a fan of meta-meditation. So actually, you mean it in a different sense. That's a pun. There's something called meta-meditation, the M-E-T-T-A. Meta is the Pali word for loving kindness. And there's specific meditation sessions about loving kindness, and talk about something that stirs up the hatred in me.
Funny, Bob. I was just being almost funny.
Right, but you meant meta, M-E-T-A. That was almost funny.
It was almost funny.
Oh, anyway, but it's heavy stuff. Because here's the thing. Oh, I won't bore you with my whole thing on meditation.
No.
Well, if you insist.
So what?
No, it's just like, we take for granted ordinary human consciousness, right? Like, this is the way we are, this is the way the world looks. And we don't keep reminding ourselves that, wait, no, we're just these particular animals on this particular planet, and our consciousness was designed by natural selection to make us look at stuff this way. It's not necessarily all true or all real. And serious meditation is a way of exploring.
You're not making any sense. I'm with you through the evolution and all that, but what do you mean, what's not real? What is not real?
Well, like when you hate enemies and convince yourself they've done all these horrible things, you may not be viewing that objectively. Like, say you had a rival for a job or a mate. And I imagine at your age, rivals for jobs are becoming pretty numerous.
I'm not sure.
And I imagine you gave up on the mating stuff long ago.
So, hang on a second. Do you think there's such a thing as the self?
Well, you know your Buddhism. Excellent question.
I mean, because I don't think there really is. I think that it's an emergent property that we tend to say, you know, like, this is who I am, or, you know, this is how I roll, this is myself. Right. And for example, there's a lot of people who want to do these life files where they do a lot of recording about what they're thinking at any given moment, with the idea that at some point a computer will reanimate them in a machine, because they will have effectively downloaded their consciousness and their memory and their experiences into the machine, and it will live forever. But I don't really see how that could work, because I don't think the self is a module, or even, you know, 14 modules. I think it's a big kind of chaotic emergent thing with multiple layers. And at any given moment, I'm talking to you, but I'm also, you know, I see my colleagues out here, I see people walking around. I kind of have a vague sense of what time it is. But, you know, I mean, if I drink some of my water, I'm not even doing that consciously. I mean, I don't know. I feel like the self, and besides which, if the notion that there's just like one person who you are, I mean, we're all full of contradictions. We contain multitudes, correct?
You almost don't need to read my next book, Joel.
Yeah, that's the forward.
And that's a shame. Yeah. By the way, there was an episode of Black Mirror, the modern equivalent of Twilight Zone, which was kind of about that scenario of being able to reconstitute a person based on the cyber record of them. But, so yeah, that's a good example of a Buddhist question. Does the self exist? And the Buddhist answer is no, of course.
Right. And at South by Southwest, there was a speaker there, Martine Rothblatt, who talked about how in the future, people will have their regular flesh self, and then their digital self will live in the machine. And the digital self, because it will continue to learn and evolve, will at some point have the right to say, I'm now a totally separate person, and essentially divorce himself, herself, itself from the original originator of the conscious self. And this actually has repercussions in terms of voting rights, because if it's just you in the machine, you get one vote. Okay, you get the flesh vote, and the machine vote doesn't get an extra vote because it's the same self, right? But if the machine self divorces the flesh self, that's two voters. And I have to
admit that the voting implications had not occurred to me. Thank you for spelling those out.
The Republicans are going to be against this. You know that.
Because it's going to be the Democrats who do it. It's going to be the Silicon Valley libertarians who do it.
I just sense, digital voter suppression coming up.
So
Was that a conversation stopper?
What?
Was that a conversation stopper?
No, it's just that, you leave so little unaddressed when you cover a topic. I mean, you cover the waterfront, and I'm just left like, what else is there to say? You just about capsulized all of Buddhism only moments ago.
Before you went off on your bizarre 2-week total immersion into Eastern meditation and philosophy, you were a little quicker, I thought. But
less serene.
Yeah, you're slower, but more serene.
More serene and more fulfilled. Yeah. And that's what our viewing and listening audience wants, is a fulfilled Bob, not an interesting Bob.
Here's a bumper sticker for you. Serenity is delusion. No?
That's a good one. You should do that.
Almost funny.
So, you're kind of refusing to seriously grapple with the implications of that piece you wrote, Joel. I mean, tell me, seriously, isn't there something deep and profound about putting your children in touch with your roots? Isn't there some reason? Doesn't that speak to what to the meaning of life for many people pretty centrally. Legacy, continuity, you're connecting your past to your future, progeny, so on.
The thing about children is that, I mean, they are an extension of yourself, but they don't know, they don't know stuff about us, their parents, whatever. And you want to say, this is where I used to go play in the creek. This is the place I worked in high school. This is the parking lot where we used to sit out and drink beer in the parking lot. This is where I went to elementary school.
And if your children are like my children, you will discover they don't care.
Not at all. Not at all. They tolerated it, and I think it's called they humored me.
Your kids are ahead of my kids. But I'll tell you, when I'm gone, when I depart this vale of tears, or whatever the expression is, then they're going to want to know, and they're going to be sorry. They're going to be darn sorry they didn't listen to me reminisce while I was still around to do it. And that'll teach them.
Is that, yeah, because do you ever play the, like, when I'm gone, you're going to feel bad that blah, blah, blah. You ever do that card?
I send them that email every day.
That daily, yeah.
It's set on auto send.
But actually, so when you did this meditation for like 5 hours a day, are you sitting in a yoga pose, and what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm sitting in more or less the pose you're imagining. It's not 5 consecutive hours. It's a number of different sessions.
Can you have chips? I mean, like chips and dip?
You're not supposed to bring any food. Well, actually, you can bring food and put it in the fridge, but basically you're dependent on their vegetarian fare. I know.
Chips are vegetarian, aren't they?
It depends on what they're
made of. I don't want to make a big. I'm not trying to make a joke.
They're Soylent Green chips.
I don't want to make a big joke about it, because I realize this is really serious to you, and you don't want me just coming on, whatever. But if I just think that it'd be hard to meditate for a long time and not think about how you want some chips.
You'd be surprised at how some of your desires are subdued by.
They just shut down.
Days and days of meditation. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Including
you know what you mean?
Yeah. Really? That shuts down?
Pretty much, yeah. But I digress.
Or that could be a sign of age. You know
what's
you lose a little pop.
It's hard to control your variables when you're an old person on a retreat. Yes.
Right. Hang on to those variables.
You know what's a good counterpoint to my meditation retreat? Is a piece you recently wrote about your smartphone. And I guess it died for a while, and so you found yourself living without a smartphone. And this became a lament about how dependent we are on our devices and even addicted to them. And see, a meditation retreat is like the opposite of that, or it's a total divorce from the grid.
Right.
And so in that sense, I would think you'd appreciate it, because this piece, which got a ton of feedback, I think, like over 1,000 comments, obviously struck a chord, was about how, and you seem to, in general, you've got your issues with the direction technology is bringing us in. This is not the only piece lately where you've kind of lamented our the way technology has reshaped the very texture of life. Right?
And I'm not a Luddite. But I see these books. Jaron Lanier's "You Are Not a Gadget." Andrew Keen, "The Internet Is Not the Answer." I mean, I have all kinds of. There's a lot of people these days writing about how the digital culture is not all it's cracked up to be, and it's not fulfilling all of its promises. And this is not Luddite, neo-Unabomber writing. This is people saying, this is not really what we imagined, that Google would have all the money and Apple would have all the money, or that and I think as a parent you probably know that just the way your kids can get totally caught up with their phone, and then me too. So the piece I wrote was about one morning my phone wouldn't charge at all. It was dead. My phone was dead, and complications ensued. I was hysterical.
That gives you like an ache inside, right?
I'm sorry, say that again?
It gives you like an ache. It's like when you first think, I don't have access to my... Like if you're out somewhere and, I can't check my email, it's like a visceral... It's like your...
a gut punch.
It eats your gut out, yes.
Gut punch, okay?
It's a gut punch.
It just eats your liver, peck by peck, But I think I actually was only without the phone for just a few hours, but it was hell. It was awful, and I did realize that perhaps I'd become too dependent upon the phone. So I guess what bothers me about the technology is the concern that what's driving it is not the optimization of human happiness, but rather the optimization of the profits for the companies that make the technology, or in some ways, the optimization of the efficiency of the machine itself. In other words, the technology is becoming sort of quasi-autonomous in seeking its own set of rewards above and beyond what this is actually good for people. Now, there's a counter argument, which I'm well aware of, which is that, hey, if people didn't like this stuff, we wouldn't use it. If the market decides, trust the market over time, the people will respond rationally to it. I don't know if I completely believe that. I think that to some extent we can one day wake up and discover that, hey, I don't actually have an office. I just sit in a cubicle, okay, all day long, staring into a screen, typing like an idiot, and that I've become a part of the machine. I'm a cog in the machine, and the machine now is driving things. And I'll whisper this. This is just us talking, right?
Sure.
You would not want, for example, journalism, even this kind of jibber-jabber journalism we're doing, or whatever you call this, to be driven too much by the preferences of the Google spiders so the search engine. If it's search engine optimized, that may not mean that it's optimized for quality. And if I can go on from that, part of the problem you have now in the digital age with journalism is that certain things get a lot of clicks, a lot of page views, whatever, and we all know that those are not necessarily the best, most illustrious pieces of journalism. And so you have to figure out, well, what should I do, and should I care if I didn't get a ton of clicks on that, or should I just do stuff that? So this is a kind of ethical quandary a little bit about what to do.
Back at the dawn of Slate magazine, when Mike Kinsley realized, you would actually have data on how much individual articles were read, which was a totally new thing, or at least clicked on, he said he didn't plan to share the information with writers because he thought it would corrupt them. I'm sure they finally did wind up, of course, sharing it with writers, but he was arguably prescient. But
can I weigh in on this?
Yeah.
Do you mind?
Yeah. This is your stage, man. We built this stage for you, Joel.
I feel like I'm interrupting you a little bit, but I just want to say I used to write for Slate back in the day, back in the 90s, and I was never told how many page views, how many readers there were, but you could kind of tell if a piece took off. But keep in mind, it was very traditional journalism in the sense that we would, bounce it back and forth with the editor. It was copy edited. It was, it was carefully constructed. This was not. You weren't just sort of trying to grab a piece of the passing, river of the zeitgeist. I mean, these are pieces that were standalone sort of pieces of featured journalism. So they weren't that different from what we traditionally did with newspapers. One more comment. So I started blogging back in 2005. Actually, I started writing an online column in 1999 called Rough Draft. I never looked at my numbers. Now, with Rough Draft, the only numbers I would look at is how many emails I would get. If I got a lot of emails, I knew that it did well. But I found that the few times I looked at the numbers when I started blogging in 2005, I discovered that the thing that got the most clicks, the thing that really resonated with readers, was if I wrote something kind of nasty about a political figure, or I wrote about American Idol. I think it was American Idol. And so I immediately thought, oh, well, today I'll write about American Idol, or I'll write about, how Karl Rove would be really bad on American Idol, or something like that, right? And then, I realized that was corrupting me. So I don't look at the numbers. I have no idea. The one I wrote the other day, where I was feeling sorry for myself and feeling old and with my kids in my hometown. I don't have the slightest idea how many people read that. I never looked at the numbers. I don't want to look at the numbers. The numbers are probably not great. I don't want to know, though, because, A, if I do know the numbers, I'll feel even more sorry for myself, in addition to being old. But also because it's corrupting. It's just best not. I mean, this advice to young journalists, don't look at the metrics. The metrics lie.
And that way you'll never be employable.
Again, yes.
Because people get hired on the basis of how much traffic they can generate and their social media following. I mean, I don't want to turn this into...
You can generate traffic and generate a lot of followers on social media without looking at the metrics. I think that the metrics will steer you wrong. And I don't mean to be militant on this, because I realize I'm a dinosaur on this. I just think that they'll tell you, obviously a really catchy headline is going to get more readers. But if you don't back it up, i.e. if the headline oversells the story, over time that's going to hurt you. So short-term metric will mislead you.
Although increasingly, a trend in journalism is that traffic is less driven, although yes, it is still driven by like the headline and whether that like gets picked up on the search engine in a prominent way. It's called search engine optimization, choosing headlines like designed to get clicks via Google. But more and more, the traffic comes not so much from that as from social media, mainly Facebook. So when you get a lot of clicks, it often means the content is motivating people to share things with their friends and followers. And that leads to a question about this whole, getting us back to the day your iPhone didn't work for 3 hours. You were like lamenting the dependence on technology as if in contrast to the old days when we, spent our time huddled around a campfire or something, having hunted and foraged all day. But of course, the main thing we put these devices to is social interaction, or at least it's a primary thing. I mean, you are partly missing, when you miss your smartphone, you're partly missing contact with other humans, right? So does that redeem the dependence on these technologies and make it less bad?
At some point, it becomes ludicrous and pathological, that sense of, oh my God, I've lost contact for the next couple of hours. What if someone wants to reach me?
Right.
And so this is an example of is the technology optimizing human happiness? Because we're all now reachable by voice, by email, and by text, and so on. And we can even, read an article, can be sent to us, and you can click on, the internet is in our pocket now. Because of that, I do think it has created a little bit of a culture at work in which you're expected to always be reachable and always connected. And so, and I realize that you don't probably technically have a job, but, people will come up to me and say, did you get my email? And I'll say, I didn't. When did you send it? And they'll say 2 minutes ago. And it's like, no, I didn't get. I didn't get. I haven't checked in the last 2 minutes. So, but there's an expectation of hyperconnectivity, if that's a word, that I think helps generate this feeling of lunacy, of digital lunacy, and oh my God, I've got to be connected. My phone doesn't work. What's going to happen? What if someone's trying to reach me? How many texts am I missing? And so. You want to hear about my routine these days?
I woke up this morning thinking there's nothing I'd rather hear about than Joel's routine these days.
Okay, so I've got this garage. It's out back at my house, like a standalone garage, little garage, built like 1930 or something. Maybe later, actually. They didn't have a lot of cars in 1930, but it's an old brick garage. So I go sit back there and I read, and I like it because although I can, of course, with my phone, I'm online. It's just removed a little bit from the regular telephone, the landline. The internet, Wi-Fi doesn't really work back there. So all I can do is kind of read and listen to the birds and then I go out and look at my garden, and I lament the lack of tomatoes. I have a fair number of tomatoes, but not as many as I would like, given how many plants I planted.
That's another point I woke up curious about this morning. Thank you for that.
Yeah. But the point is that what I like about it is it feels a little more removed from the digital maelstrom. Now, of course, by around 8 o'clock or so, this is like 7 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But it's my time. You know what I mean? No one's gonna try to talk to me, and I don't do my email. And then you check your email. Once you check your email, your day is shot.
This is true. When I meditate in the morning, I don't look at my email before the meditation. You'll be happy to know.
And how long do you meditate for?
In the morning, usually like 35 minutes.
And remind me what you do. What do you think about?
I try not to think. You focus on you usually start by focusing on your breath, which is just a way to shut down the wandering mind, the so-called default mode network.
What about, like, how are you going to get chapter 4 to lead into chapter 5? You don't think about that?
Well, sometimes it's hard not to. This is part of the challenge.
You try to shut down your mind.
Yeah, but you don't try too self-consciously, or it won't work. You just try to focus. It's almost like using your breath as a distraction, and that can take you into a zone where concentration and focus are easier, and there's fewer and fewer interruptions from your default mode network. But there's nothing like being on retreat. I mean, in terms of, you get to a point where sinking into a deep meditative state is very easy. Let me tell you a little experiment I did, speaking of the tooth of mine that you're so concerned about and that I'm having a root canal on in a few days. I did an experiment on the retreat. Like, it was killing me when I had, like, even room temperature beverages. So I was going to sit down and meditate in my room. So before I did, I had like a little bit of like water right on the tooth. And it was like, yeah, man, that really hurts. It really hurt. Then I meditated for 30 minutes. And then just put like a gallon, just a ton on, okay? And it was like less painful than it was right on the verge between bitter and sweet. It was like very dramatic, a lot of throbbing, but it was like, it's part of the thing. This is like a metaphor for what meditation is about, Joel, is that a lot of the pain, the suffering in your life is in your head. It's in your interpretation of what's actually going on physiologically.
And can't you just, like, drink a bunch of bourbon or something to take away that?
There was none available. I've done that experiment.
Are you saying that you were able to blot out the pain, or you became one with the pain?
It's not like blotting it out. It's more like
a thing of pain. You were like a pain.
No, the pain is at some level real, but a lot of the suffering is added on from the beginning. So it's not like you have to blot it out. You just have to not do it. You just focus on the sheer.
Like if you get eaten by a shark, okay? So let's say the problem of being eaten by a shark is it's not just that it hurts, but it's like, God damn, I'm getting eaten by a shark. So that extra layer.
Right. It's the part where you regret being eaten by a shark.
Yeah.
It's thinking, hey, I'll be dead tomorrow.
You'd say, I remember what I did when I had the toothache, and you would just go with it, okay? And it's okay. Because you had the force field of meditation.
I was focusing.
I'm not mocking you. I'm actually impressed by it.
No, you'd never mock me. But I was focusing on the sheerly physical.
But why are you doing this? What about chapter 6 of your book?
I had just emailed the whole darn book to my editor, Joel.
The kids need advice on stuff. You've got work to do, or the yard needs to be mowed. How many emails do you have in your inbox? I have 16,000 emails unread in my work email, and I have 20,000 in my personal email. I have like 36,000 unread emails. So if I meditate, I'm thinking about how can I more quickly just delete the spam? Okay, you understand? And I even got into that. I have a deer problem. I built a deer fence around some of the tomatoes. I still have tomatoes outside the fence. Okay, and so what about the deer? And I get up in the morning, I go out there, and I look for the droppings, and because the deer come along and they munch on the tomatoes. So what about that? All right, I got stories to do. I got projects to do. Guess what? I have a job, so no one's going to pay me to sit there and go, all day long and just meditate.
I have a job. In contrast,
I'm going to suggest to my editor right now, hey, do you mind if I just sit in here and just, concentrate on my teeth, and breathe, my breathing or whatever it is you do?
Now,
That's not going to work. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. That's not reality.
But you don't mean to mock me.
No.
Good. I was worried that you might.
I was just sort of being almost funny.
Here's a question. Do you feel, having not been brought up religiously, that's like, is that problematic? In terms of finding meaning in life. So I guess you don't believe in an afterlife. You don't think there's some God, smiling down on you, giving you purpose, whatever. Is that an issue?
So let me show you. Let me show you one of the books that's right here, underneath my laptop. Reinventing the Sacred. Okay, I've grown up with all just Stuart
Kaufman. He's like a physicist, kind of
a beautiful question by Frank Wilczek. Okay, advanced reading copy. Finding Nature's Deep Design. Okay. I get all these great science books. I like the science stuff. I think about the big questions. The future of technology. Is technology deterministic? What's life going to be like in 100 years? What is our ethical duty to people who have not yet lived here? And how far in the future does it extend? Essentially, to anyone, even someone 10,000 years from now, do I have an ethical duty to be concerned about that person? These are big questions. I think about this stuff all the time, but I typically view it more from a scientific standpoint than I would from a traditional kind of scriptural standpoint. That said, I do think that that religions and traditional religions tend to ask people to think about these issues of what counts, what's right, what's wrong, and I that's great, and I admire that, and I think that when I go to a church service, a funeral, a wedding, or any kind of event like that, a christening, I like it when people talk about these fundamental values. I think that's important. So, my grandfather was a minister. Actually.
Really?
He was a universalist. He was a universalist minister.
A universalist? That was not Universalist Unitarian. It was pre-merger.
Pre-merger. Oh yeah. So I come from.
That's a liberal, pretty liberal theological background. I mean, Universalists believed that no one is damned, that everyone gets salvation.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my background. So, my parents were kind of like Unitarians basically, but I think that some kind of grounding in religion is good for people to understand this long discussion about values and meaning, the stuff that you're doing. It's all good.
Related question. So you write a lot about science, about probes sent to planets, the scope of the universe, the vastness. Some people. You've heard of the vastness of the universe. Some people, like Richard Dawkins is always saying, I don't need religion, I have the awe that I get while pondering nature. Is that any kind of... there's two things that get said. Some people say they get a lot of spiritual gratification out of thinking we are stardust, we're made out of the same stuff as stars, and that's never quite done it for me. It's like... But the other thing is awe. Awe is what gives my life meaning, pondering the awe of nature. Is that working for you?
I wouldn't say that alone gives life meaning. I think the relationships between people are probably more important to me. Certainly my family and friendships give more meaning to my life. I would say what gives me my life meaning is that I think the ability to appreciate the world. Okay, in other words, just to simply say, hey, I love that thing. Or that's beautiful, or that sounds fantastic. Okay, the ability to appreciate. So listen, you go on a hike. Okay, you're in the mountains. You're on your trail. You're around a corner. Boom, you see these beautiful mountains. What gives it meaning is not the tectonic forces that made the mountains.
Okay, so Joel, there was a little freezing up there, but the upshot, first of all, just to put a punctuation mark on this, was that pondering nature does something I think quasi-spiritual for you. It's not necessarily, though, the scientific explanation of it per se. It's more the apprehension the grandeur and so on. And since you may be freezing up now, you can just answer in sign language, in American Sign Language.
So I would say the evolution of consciousness, which includes the ability to appreciate things and to have strong emotional connections to people and to love other people. To me, that's more significant than, say, the tectonic forces that created the mountains.
Okay, I'm with you
Does that
there.
make sense?
I am with you there. It would be one thing if evolution just created these like machines that were zombies and worked well as machines, but didn't have subjective experience, wasn't like anything to be alive, but for reasons we don't totally understand, it is like something to be alive. I personally am in favor of that.
Do your shtick.
I'm going to do my shtick. The aforementioned questions that people may have about Meaning of Life TV, or may not have, but I will answer anyway. So, first of all, Blogging Heads TV is not going anywhere. There will be Blogging Heads TV content and Meaning of Life TV content. However, it is true that Meaning of Life TV content will be featured on the homepage of Blogging Heads TV, much as Blogging Heads TV content is, but it will be labeled as Meaning of Life TV content. And if you click on it to imbibe it, you will find yourself magically transported to Meaning of Life TV. However, Meaning of Life TV will have its own homepage, and you can go directly to that if you want. And that's clear. I see no signs of puzzlement on your intermittently frozen face, Joel. So I think I've succeeded wildly in that first one.
Yeah, I think you're good. Why can't Blogging Heads TV be Meaning of Life TV?
Well, Blogging Heads TV has to some extent been Meaning of Life TV, and we found that this kind of content, and by this kind of content I mean a whole array of things, from like psychologists talking about human nature to scientists talking about cosmic things, philosophers, theologians, Buddhist monks, whoever wants to ponder various meaningful questions. We found that people like that kind of content, but it is different from the kind of political policy stuff that we do on Blogging Heads.
Yeah, I don't like that stuff.
You're the kind of person Meaning of Life is created for. Now you can go directly to Meaning of Life TV rather than just go to Blogging Heads and search for the term Joel Achenbach, which has been your past pattern. Okay,
for me, is this a promotion or a demotion?
Well, actually, it's all good precisely because Meaning of Life TV content will appear on the homepage of Blogging Heads. You're not losing anything there, but it will also appear on the homepage of Meaning of Life TV. Now, this is in the early days, so we may eventually, there may be a complete separation. I don't know, as Meaning of Life TV develops its own audience. But
I'm now going to go back to my job.
Okay, I got just one more thing. Everyone is encouraged. I mean, they can sign up for the emails that notify them of Meaning of Life TV content. They can sign up for the podcast. And by the way, most of our audience is actually an audio podcast audience these days. That's the direction of things.
They can't see us?
Sadly, some of them cannot see us, Joel. They cannot see us freeze up. They can only hear us freeze up. And they're missing half the fun. But another thing people can do if they want to support Meaning of Life TV is they can like us on the homepage of Meaning of Life TV. Click like on the Facebook thing, and then Facebook will bring them some Meaning of Life TV highlights magically. They can also comment on, come to the video site, even if they listen to it on podcasts. They can come to the video site, leave the kinds of intelligent and civil, if critical, comments that make the people who appear on the site just rhapsodically happy that they have the privilege of appearing on a site with such an intelligent, critical, yet civil commentariat. You know what I'm saying, Joel?
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice people. Nice people, yeah.
Nice people.
Smart, but nice.
Not to contrast them with anyone else on the internet, but exactly. Smart.
Yeah, exactly.
Smart, but nice. So listen.
Civil.
I think those are the highlights. We also have a new video player, which will make the content accessible on a wider array of platforms, more different browsers and mobile phenomena and so on. If there are glitches in the early days with the player, people should dial 911.
One last thing. So I know you've been in your rabbit hole for weeks and you don't really know what's going on. People, and this would interest you because of your interest in the brain and meditation. People can apparently now smoke marijuana legally.
Yeah, but that has these residual unfortunate effects.
Yeah. So, just saying it's
But a meditation retreat doesn't leave you foggy and hungover the day after.
Does it give you the munchies?
Actually, it doesn't, but it makes you appreciate food more. People are sitting there at a meditation retreat like eating with their eyes closed because they're just savoring every drop because it's so good. That lettuce. Oh, that lettuce.
The celery. Oh, gosh.
Oh, the celery.
Yeah, the
so
beets.
Crunchy. The texture.
Okay, Bob. Well, listen, this has been interesting.
Joel, thank you for being part of this this send-off for Meaning of Life TV. And thank you for your good work. People should read Achenblog. They should follow you on... What's your Twitter handle?
Maybe at Joel Achenbach. I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably...
Something like that?
That wasn't taken, probably. Yeah, it's Joel Achenbach.
Probably. There's not a lot of demand for that. I think I'm the only one to ask for it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But Achenblog, yeah. And so, but no, this is... so far, Meaning of Life TV reminds me a lot of Blogging Heads TV. I just want to say that part of it. So
you are
not a radical departure.
You are not a typical Meaning of Life TV conversion in some respects.
Thank you.
But you are within the range.
Thank you. Yeah, within the range.
You are within the range. So thank you. I'll let you get back to your cubicle that Jeff Bezos has reserved for you. And
okay,
and we'll see you next time.
All right, see you soon.
Okay, thank you.